Hello and welcome back to the latest episode of the Talking Point here on the Rangers Review with me, Chris Jack, and my long-time colleague, friend, confidant and Ibrox source, Stevie Clifford. How are we?
I'm good, mate. I'm good. Things are coming along a bit slower than I had hoped for and anticipated, but things are certainly coming along. First new arrival of the Russell Martin tenure is here. If we exclude the fact that Leo Cameron was a Bosman deal before that, but Max is here, so yeah, I'm hoping for a lot more, Chris, a lot more quickly. Hopefully, but a start is a start. So yeah, plenty to discuss as always, isn't there?
The sooner the better in terms of the rebuild, I think. Then people can stop texting us and sending us messages on Twitter saying when are we going to sign some more players. It's in hand, is all I can say. Rather than do transfers today, we're going to look at the EGM that was held on Monday. Andrew Cavenagh, his first public appearance as chairman. Paraag Marathe was there as vice chairman, and they were joined on the stage by Fraser Thornton, former chairman, board member, and Patrick Stewart, obviously the Rangers chief exec. Stevie, you weren't there, but I know you've read every word, you've watched every reaction video, you've consumed all of the content since. What were your first impressions of Cavenagh and Marathe? And did they say the right things for you? Did they strike the right tone for you?
Well, first of all, I thought that both of them came with a stature and a sense of gravitas behind their own self. Like they had a bit of standing, if that makes sense. So I quite like that, and I was immediately struck by that. I thought they spoke well. There wasn't majorly big promises. I don't think anywhere. There was no bluster. That's one of the big things. I think that's a good word, because you know as well as I do in the last several years that statements such as one title and they'll fall like a pack of cards and all that kind of stuff has never really stood us in good stead or done us any favours. So to come away from that EGM on Monday and there's no headlines, not even the experts online have taken any particular lines and said they've said everything I wanted them to say, Chris, in terms of this is going to be an infrastructure rebuild on and off the pitch. They want stability on and off the pitch where we can be sustainable. That was a big thing, sustainable on and off the pitch, and they would take their time to get there, but with a sense, obviously, of urgency around what is needed. I think Andrew Cavenagh said that they were well aware of the charges, of the challenges and what needed to be done immediately. And they said there was a lot of work to be done, which I liked. There wasn't any sugarcoating of anything. So I thoroughly enjoyed it, genuinely. I haven't, the only thing I haven't seen from the EGM and the afterwards media press conference is the actual fans' questions, but I've read them all and I thought they handled them particularly well. I don't think there was anything majorly in there. I like the fact that they spoke, and this is maybe not the right terminology, but quietly almost into it, So, as I said, no big grand gestures or anything. So I was intrigued and pleased by what they had to say, Chris. But I do have the share issue. Obviously, the motions as such, the four of them were put through. The 20 million has been approved, and I was going to ask you, what does that mean? Because I do have some questions. Andrew Cavenagh and Paraag Marathe said on the club channel that they were investing £20 million and they had signed up to do that. But we also know that other shareholders are investing into it. So is it only 20 million for the share issue, or can that go higher? Could it be lower? Have they just underwritten the 20 million as a minimum? Could you maybe explain what that and the move away from the PLC mean? Because that's the only thing. I'm not like business. You know me. I'm a fan. I don't understand quite what it means. And some people say, oh, it's not a problem. Other people seem to have a problem. So are you able to underline just exactly what it is?
I'll do my best. I think the reason a number of these more business orientated shows, and you almost throw that hospital pass straight in my direction. I think the the whole EGM was set up for that 20 million to put into the club. They didn't do it just to come and say hello and start making friends and influencing people. There was a real important business sense behind it. We had a piece on the review site last week going through the key questions of why now and the process behind it. And in effect, that EGM or those 4 resolutions, they're there to allow the investors to put money directly into the club. So we've seen in previous seasons for a long time now, it's been loans which have then been converted to shares. The rights that were passed at the last EGM, or last AGM, sorry, last December, the club had basically used up all their headroom. They had converted the maximum amount of shares and loans that they were able to do. They're not going down that funding road anymore. It's not going to be a case of we'll give you X amount, but we want those shares back in terms of a loan. This is a new rights issue. Those new shares have been issued. The American consortium have taken up the majority of that £20 million, and other directors have chipped in to that initial offering because they want to keep their shareholding above the 5% level. So people will know after the takeover, certain investors still wanted to be involved. They still want to have a part to play. They want to remain above a 5% shareholding, and that the breakdown of that 20 million allowed them to do that. It was always going to pass. The votes had been done in such a way, everyone had committed to it. There was never any danger of Graham Horseman standing up on stage and saying, well, actually, our resolutions 1 to 4 have failed. If it had been, that would have been a major problem for Rangers. They didn't need that 20 million. People will ask about PSR and financial rules and regulations. They didn't need that 20 million, but again, it just gives them a bit more headroom and allows them to be a bit more bold, if you like, in terms of the transfer market. That's not to say that 20 million is all they're going to spend in the window. I think Andrew and Paraag are very careful to say that money is not our transfer budget. You don't want to advertise your entire transfer budget to the rest of the football world, obviously, but people will know that's roughly what Rangers have got to spend as a start, plus what they then bring on board from other player sales. So that is really the first part of them putting more money or putting money into the club, and they were keen for the deal to be structured in that way. So when they were going through the takeover process, in theory, they didn't have to do part 2, which was the EGM. They could have spent their money, about £70 million or so, buying the shares and gaining control. They didn't then have to stump up that 20 million to put straight in, but it was almost a show of intent, a further evidence to the fans. We're serious. We've got the money. We're going to invest in this club, and most importantly, we're going to invest in this team. So that was the main headline from it in a business sense. The other one was also the move to a limited company and moving away from the PLC, and that's almost a bit of housekeeping. The Rangers have not been operating as a full PLC for quite some time now. A number of years ago that they came off the exchange, and obviously shares have not been traded that freely since then. So it's really just a bit of housekeeping. The consortium would rather run Rangers in this way. I think the big point out of that is you won't see the EGM in the same format. There's not that requirement to do that. Andrew Cavenagh was asked on that both at the meeting by a couple of shareholders. He was asked about it in the media briefing afterwards as well, and can reassure that there will be some form of meeting, shareholder sit down where concerns and questions can be put and can be raised. And I think for me, Stevie, that's a really important thing, that accountability, because there's no club and there's no support that knows the need for scrutiny of any board or any investor like Rangers. Everything this club has been through over the last 2 decades or more, Rangers fans, they want to know what's happening. They take more of an interest in the financials than a number of other supporters. Is that accountability important for you? And even if it's not going to be an EGM like we've seen, I think the fact they're committing to doing some form of meeting and some form of sit down, they want to work with the fans and the fan advisory board, and they're keen to have those stakeholder relations. That for me is a good sign.
Yeah, absolutely is, and I think it's vital that we learn from things that went on in the past, and we keep a close eye on things. I think even with the former board members, even the likes of Dave King, we still did that. So I don't think it changes as such, but I do think there's more of a relaxed approach to this now because the gravitas of those involved, Andrew Cavenagh, the 49ers Enterprises being a stakeholder in that 51%. We've seen what they've done elsewhere, especially with Leeds United and the 49ers, and indeed Paraag Marathe talked about, 2 turnarounds and his, desire to win and stuff like that. So, I'm not entirely concerned about that as much as I have been previously because I'm quite relaxed in knowing that they will do. But see, to be honest, Chris, this is just my own thinking of it. And I'm not necessarily sure it will happen. And I'm sure I've mentioned this before. I would expect our commercial and hospitality things, sponsorship things to really up a level.
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about on your shirts, off the pitch. I think all that will really begin to take shape. I'm not going to make any wild claims about brand names or anything like that, but I just think that I can see Rangers being able to attract now through their kind of business acumen and from their reach of the 49ers and all that kind of stuff, that they'll have a wider scope and they'll be able to do things that we've maybe not thought of. They've already spoke about immediate changes to Ibrox hospitality and things. I can genuinely see that happening. There's a lot of scope for that. And I wouldn't be surprised to see changes within Ibrox to kind of try and implement that. So, yeah, in terms of keeping an eye on them, I'm not keeping an eye on them as such with any degree of worry anymore. I think I'm quite financially, I'm okay with it. And look, we might make losses, in seasons, but I think overall the end game, when they talk about sustainability on and off the pitch and that, you believe that. And because they've taken us over at such a down point, it's not like they're taking over like a title winning club and everything's okay. They've got Ibrox to sort, they've got the training ground to upgrade, they've got various things they need to do before they even focus on spending money on the players on the pitch, which they'll need to go. Now, potentially we'll sell. I understand that and get money in. They might balance and trade off. I get that completely. But they've already come in and signed off on things in the training ground immediately. New spa, new facilities for the players. That's £1 million just like that. And they've done it and it's there. They're talking about new medical facilities up at the training ground. All that sort of stuff they have to come in and do. So I think we have to be wary of the fact that, there's not going to be a profit in things straight away. But as long as they're comfortable in what they're doing, we should be comfortable. I think the days of kind of worrying about that is over. But I genuinely think over time, and things will balance. We'll get better deals. We'll get more commercial things. You'll see things being advertised in hospitality differently, and I think genuinely on the strip, bigger deals and things like that. So that's what I'm hoping for and expecting, and I think being able to raise those commercial incomes and things like that, and I think they even spoke about that a wee bit, is key to me. And what I'm trying to get at is it'll all balance out in the years to come. And I'm not talking about 10 years, I'm talking about 2-3 years. These things will change and deals will change and things. And that's what I really expect. And that's why I'm a bit more relaxed about it. I'm not so worried about, where we are and keeping a complete scrutiny and eye on them, which I think we'll naturally do anyway. But I don't think there'll be as much need because these things will turn over. And that's what I'm certainly hoping for. So with that, Chris, I mean, as a support, we'll always do it. But for me personally, that's just what I'm hopeful of. And I'm really think that that's the kind of route we'll go down. But just to get away, I want to ask you about something else as well. The SPFL board and Cavenagh and Marathe met them. Obviously, Patrick Stewart's now on the SPFL board. We've had a lot of representation all across various boards of the SPFL. Rangers were very big on actually. I think they said it was 11 different boards. That might be wrong. But there's various representation. Where are we now? Because we're right on the back of the whole Nico Raskin thing at Easter Road, the cup final where we had a complete non-penalty, which they apologised for. Thanks for that, but it cost us a cup final. And by the way, ultimately probably cost Philippe Clement his job, because from that moment the spiral in that was completely downhill. So I'm not sure we're in a position to make friends and influence people, but there's a line, isn't there? And I don't think any of the fans will want us to make friends and influence people, but there has to be. What I'm trying to get at is here, how do they approach this now? Because there needs to be a firmness. I like the statements of before, but how do you get that guidance right so that we can influence change, TV deals, etc., etc.? How do we do that for the better of Rangers first and foremost, and the game in the long term?
I think there's a real balance to be struck there, isn't there? When you speak about making friends and influencing people, that's part of it. I think the club they've moved away from the kind of constant war footing that they were on a few years ago during Douglas Park's time as chairman. I think John Bennett tried to do a lot of work to not repair the damage as such, but try and move Rangers in a different way, try and make Rangers a bit friendlier, a bit more open, a bit more willing to actually sit at the table with various stakeholders. Ultimately, Rangers, as one of the two dominant clubs in Scotland, they should have a voice, they should have a weight, they should be able to throw that weight about in different ways. It's not always worked. You mentioned refereeing decisions. You mentioned there was a long running dislike, if you like, of Neil Doncaster. They don't appreciate his efforts in terms of his job at the SPFL. But I think we've seen in all of these things, certainly the Doncaster situation and the situation Murdoch McLennan in previous seasons as well, it was fine Rangers briefing things to the media or fine putting statements out, fine trying to build a wee bit of pressure that way. But they needed other clubs to come with them. They need to have a handful that they can say, we're going to have this course of action. Will you come with us? Will you support us? When it comes down to it, will you vote with us on whatever issue it's going to be? And too often Rangers found themselves standing in the corner, shouting at the rest of the room and being ignored. They didn't have that ability to form alliances, to have allegiances, to ultimately get things done. This feels like a real clean slate moment for them. Also with a new chief exec and certainly new board members coming in. I know Fraser Thornton as a Glasgow-based one. He will do a lot of these political moving and shaking meetings, and I think it's good that the Rangers do have representation on as many of these boards as possible. Because, as I say, their voice should be heard.
Can I just jump in? I wanted to ask you a wee bit more on this. Do you think, obviously, Hibs have got American investment, even Livingston now have got new owners. I know teams like St Johnstone obviously have went relegated, but they've got owners as well. Tony Bloom coming into Hearts. Do you think, and even Aberdeen's kind of change of direction in recent years as well, do you think in the long run for Scottish football in terms of TV deals and that's going to be helpful? Because surely these people are wanting to maximise, and we don't have maximum value at the moment. So between them and the push, obviously, from Rangers now of having those new owners and their reach and the 49ers and their deals that they've done, could we get together with other clubs? And do you think that in the long term, or medium to short, to whatever you want to call it, could be really beneficial for Scottish football? Because let's be honest, we're not getting the best deals. And the way that we've accepted deals and done deals in recent years just doesn't make sense to me. And even James Bisgrove, as much as he was criticised or whatever else and has been retrospectively, he spoke up about it at the time, not going to tenure, not chasing those things. If that's James Bisgrove and we consider, or other people consider him to be whatever they want, what about the guys that have come in now over the course of all the clubs? Surely their expertise and knowledge could help drive that in a positive way for everyone over the course of Scottish football. Because I welcome, if we've got a stronger Hibs and a stronger Hearts and we've got a stronger league, people say, oh, it's more difficult for Rangers, but we can't have a situation where it's not difficult for Celtic every single season. It's if we have more teams that are stronger and better and more clubs off the field that challenge, it's actually better for Rangers in the long run, because then Celtic you're not counting on yourself because Celtic can drop points elsewhere. Does that make sense? So we want a stronger league, a more competitive league for all sorts of reasons. But do you think in the long run that can benefit Scottish football?
I think you could be looking over the next handful of seasons, call it 5, just to put a number on it, of Scottish football becoming more and more competitive. I think the investment of Tony Bloom at Hearts is really interesting. The Hibs one, also with the Bournemouth tie-up, it's still relatively new. They had a great, after a really dreadful start last year. They really come onto a game, finished really strongly, and I'm interested to see how they can take that on as well. You mentioned the other kind of American investors, obviously St Johnstone, Livingston, like Calvin Ford, the United, Aberdeen have also got various tie-ins with American businessmen as well. It's fresh eyes, it's fresh personalities, it's fresh ideas, and that can only be a good thing for Scottish football. For a long time, a number of these committees, a number of these boards, they felt a bit stale. It was the same names, the same faces, going through the same kind of processes, and ultimately, if you put the same things in at the start, you get the same things out at the end. This feels like it could be a really exciting time for Rangers and for Scottish football. I think the influence of Paraag could be key in that. You look at his track record at Leeds of late, speaks for itself. His track record at the 49ers is incredible. We had a profile piece on the site on him a couple of weeks ago. It went back out ahead of the general meeting over the weekend. His successes and some of the things that he's done at the 49ers really speak volumes for his business sense, his commercial nous, his drive. He's a really interesting character and someone who I think can bring a lot to the table at Rangers, a lot to the table at Scottish football level as well. And one of the things that he spoke at the meeting about and in the press briefing was Ibrox. He's mentioned before about clubs are no longer run like lemonade stands. They don't just see their stadium as, we'll maybe play on a Wednesday if the fixtures are there, we'll definitely play on a Saturday. They use the stadium in a different way. You touched on it earlier on with the new hospitality suites and some of the work that's been signed off already. I think people look at stadium redevelopment and think, oh, we'll knock it down, we'll start again, and we'll fill in the corners. It doesn't have to be as radical as that straight away. There could be plans in place to add thousands of seats onto Ibrox, but just like basic stuff right now. Say, given the suites a once over, some of the concourses, what can you do with the food provision? What can you do in and around the stadium footprint? Even just putting some new tarmac down and giving the place a tidy up would make such a huge difference. And that's the type of thing that they will look at. It's not a case of, I'll be to knock Ibrox down and go and build a mega Brox. Let's just do the basic things first and foremost, and then we'll see what the appetite is for stadium redevelopment. Is that how you see Ibrox in terms of its next phase, or are you going, let's just get 70,000 seats in there?
No, I'm like you. I'm very much like you. I think there's things that we could do short term that will be beneficial. I know that they had looked upon, I spoke about this the other day actually, they looked at one point to the offices in the middle of the Copeland where the likes of the RST and all those people used to be, or Club 1872. All those kind of offices in there, they had looked at those potentially as hospitality ideas and been able to then, build in that. And it's not quite a Club 72, but similar to that kind of bar area of putting things in there. These are things I think they'll go in straight away and look at. Ibrox, to me, like you say, that there is a lot of room for expansion. Small, which 1,000 here, 1,000 there, you quickly get up to 55,000 and things like that. And people say, oh, that's not much of a difference. But we're starting with a minus, 8,000 deficit every single season in seats. If we can start chipping away at that, you don't need the radical, let's knock down and take the screens out, which would cost a hell of a lot of money because of the way it was built and the actual stature of the stands and the way it's built. To have that in there, it would take a lot to get it out. So what can we do to maximise it in the short term? Could they fill in the gaps at the corners of the main stand, for example? I'm not saying where the enclosure is and those gaps there. Could they do something in there that might be quite interesting? I don't know if that'll work. It'll need a better mind than mine. But could they do that? That's an interesting kind of proposition for me. Could something like that work? Could they even put a few tiers and take the pitch down slightly? Because I know they had that looked at, and people will say about the water levels and stuff. I don't think that was an issue in the end of it. So it's a case of what do they see as financially doable. I'd like to see that happen. I'm not sure that, that in the long run, Chris, in 5 years or 7 years, they might decide to put a tier at the back of the Copeland or extend it up, because there's plenty of room. People, you need to remember that the actual walkway around Ibrox is massive in terms of what football clubs have. We've got plenty of room to extend out, like they've done at Dortmund, like they've done at Liverpool and things like that. That's feasibility studies that they could look into and see how they could do it. And I know that that maybe be something they have in the long run. But short term, I'm with you. Where can they do the smaller things? How can they improve hospitality? Where in the main stand can we improve things for the suites and things like that? Where could you put in more tiers and more? Could you add onto the main stand somehow? These are things that I think are really worth looking into. So I think from a kind of business point, a stadium point and all that, you'll get these ideas now and they'll be able to look at what's feasible and what's not. And I know that the previous board did look heavily into what they could do over Ibrox, but the concern has always been the pitch, hasn't it? And we've never been able to quite, it's not been what we've spent. We've just never really got the luck that it's stuck, because you can't accuse the former board of not spending. They've just not spent well. So I think and I hope these new owners and the things they spoke about the progress on and off the pitch and sustainability and things like that, I'm pretty sure, Chris, they will be looking into things short and longer term. It would be, wouldn't it be wonderful to have a 70,000 seat at Ibrox where they built an extra tier or they built into things? But short term, I would love it to go up to 55, 56,000 by being able to add seats and being able to add things. I think that would be wonderful. They talk about, the waiting list and the My Gers list and things like that. So maybe adding 3,000 or 4,000 new season ticket seats in would really work for us as well. So just that's my kind of take on it. But probably the last thing I was going to say to you is, and I was quite surprised by this, I suppose, when Andrew Cavenagh said they don't have an exit strategy and they're here for the long term. It was a good thing for me to hear that. But how do they make money? How do they get their investment back? What is their... How do you view that? It was interesting when he said about having no exit plan. We'll figure an exit plan out in years. I think they mentioned over the course of their tenure, but he did say 10 years, which was kind of got an applause in the room and things like that, if I remember that correctly. So I'm not saying he's going to be here for 10 years. That could be a generic answer. But how do you see their involvement and what are they getting out of this? What do we have to consider that?
I think on a very basic level, what they're getting out of it is, as they outlined, they clearly love the game. They clearly love to win. They've been very successful in their own business spheres, and they want a slice of that action. Now, some of the games they were at last year, being at Parkhead, Andrew Cavenagh mentioned that to us in the media briefing, being at Parkhead and being there for that.
You're welcome.
Been there for that game, being at Fenerbahce, being involved in a tie like the Athletic one and in the latter stage of European competition. There's very few clubs that you can go and buy, certainly for the outlay that they put in, that are going to give you that. You've bought a club that come the end of the season could be sitting, I'm not saying it will happen, but let's hope, could be sitting with 3 trophies that's given you 3 wonderful experiences and a European run. That, I think, is worth a lot to them. That's what they are getting out of it on a very basic level. On a financial level, they will only make money if Rangers are successful. So see a lot of theories about it's going to be cost cutting, it's going to be asset stripping, all the usual nonsense that you get from elsewhere. The only way they make any money out of Rangers is if Rangers are successful. So in future years down the road, perhaps could they pay themselves a dividend out of whatever's left at the end of the year? Perhaps could they sell part of their shares if Rangers are successful? That share price goes up. So rather than shares being worth, call it 20, 25 pence a shot, they could be worth 40, 50, 60 pence a shot. That obviously makes you a bit of money. but I don't think that's what they're here for. I don't think they see it as a financial investment as such. I think they see it as an emotional investment. I think that's what they believe they can get out of it. Obviously, from a 49ers perspective, as Paraag touched on in the media interviews, and as you've outlined there, there's commercial growth, there's growth in marketing, there's changes you can make to PR, there's changes you can make right across every aspect of the club. And I think he seemed that he's quite enthused by that challenge. And ultimately, if they're sitting at the end of the season and the Premiership title is there, then they've achieved everything that the Rangers fans could have asked for them, and that would have given them everything that they could have wished for in that first season. How likely is that? Time will tell. If you were, I know we're only a handful of days into pre-season, handful of days into this new era. How would you rate their chances of having that success this season? Can it be? Now, for them, it's not going to be a one and done. If Rangers were to go and win the title next season, they're not going to say, well, actually, that was really good. Let's just go and sell our shares and move on. It's only going to motivate them further to go and build and go bigger and go again. But what's the chances of success in season one, do you think?
Well, it would need a number of factors to happen. We would need a really good recruitment, and that would need to happen. And I'm talking about another 8-9 bodies in of solid kind of stature, where out of that, say 10 overall, 7 or 8 of them were absolute hits. That's a non-negotiable. And then you would need to get guys that could pitch in for the squad and be good. So you would need your Jeffties and your Lyle Camerons and your Connor Barons and everybody else to actually be solid squad players that would contribute. So these are factors you would need immediately. You would need Russell Martin to succeed. Now that's not as easy as we know, because that's a whole new philosophy, and you also need a patience from the fans not to overreact if things don't click straight away, which, you know, I'm a prime candidate for that not being the case with our support. So there's a number of factors there, but you've also got to factor in what's going on across the city. Now, whether we will admit that or not, Celtic have been miles ahead of us in recent years, but Celtic also dipped quite a bit in the last 6 months of that season. Now, there's two reasons for that. One, because they had no challenge. But we also know that once clubs start to go on that trajectory, it's very difficult to get them going and turn things around and stuff again. So I think we would need that to continue from them also for us to be able to be there and thereabouts. We also need the likes of Hibs and Hearts and Aberdeen to be in a position where they can beat them and take points off them, and people will say, but that makes it more difficult for us. Well, we've struggled against these teams anyway. So we need that to happen throughout the league so that it becomes more competitive for us. And there's not a defeatist about what I'm about to say, Chris, but I really, really hope this summer is the start of Rangers on and off the pitch, making good decisions for the football club, which then don't need to be rectified or corrected in 6 months, stroke 1 year down the line. The rebuilding of Rangers needs to stop. This, constant need to rip it up and go again. Now, we do need to rip it up, sadly. There's going to be a number of players that go out the door this summer. I would estimate 8 to 10 players will go out and as many as will come in. And people will say, well, the window's been open 10 days. That's not happened yet. It's not happened yet because a lot of teams don't do business until July, because that's when the European window opens between teams and a lot of players are on holiday and all that kind of stuff comes in. It's never really busy at this time for Rangers traditionally. So I still think there's plenty of time to do that. But I just hope that in this, we begin to build. Now, the thing about the league is really interesting, because if we win it this year and the wonderful things did happen, then automatic qualification for the Champions League through our own coefficient points and that is really quite high, because Olympiacos are the only ones that are close to us, and they're not, top kind of bodies in Greece. That's a wee bit kind of up nor down, isn't it? So that's an interesting one. And I wonder if that could be a driver for them, if they would think, well, look, we might make that extra investment. As we know at the moment, there's really big interest in Hamza Igaman. If he was to move on, I don't expect that to be cheap. I would think Rangers would hold out for really top dollar there, and that money would then be reinvested. And people would say, well, why would you do that? Because Hamza Eagleman might bring £4 or £5 million players into this club that could build the spine of the team and make a world of difference, Chris. So these are things that I would consider. Now, I would have said that with Nico Raskin as well. But if you're asking me one of the two, then Hamza's the one you would choose with absolute gratitude. You know, if you had to lose one, you would say, okay, Hamza, thanks very much. Because I just think that the levels Nico Raskin hit last year and the way that Russell Martin will play and the way that Barry had him playing, with all due respect to Barry, he'd done a wonderful job with him. And he brought a different side. The more attacking Nico Raskin actually became a threat at set pieces wonderfully. If we can do that and you can, all these things take shape, and it does need quite a lot to come in, then yeah, we can have a successful season. But it's more important for me, as silly as it sounds, and it's not a defeatist attitude, Chris. It's a realism of this needs to be the first step to get to where we need to be and stay there. Not to get there and one and done, like you say, what's happened before, and you get there and you burst all your resources getting there. Get there, stay there, and become the top team in the country again regularly, because it'll swap about and the titles will come and go and things. Understand that somebody will maybe get two, the other one will get one, two, etc. But as long as we're doing the majority of the winning, that's where everybody wants to be, and we would love to dominate and go on a 10-year spell, and like the 90s and all that. I'm not saying obviously, but that's really key for me. And I know I've waffled a wee bit there, and I apologise to everybody, but that sustainability is a wee bit more important than getting a quick fix for me. Put the building blocks in place, build your spine of the team, fix the club off the park, make sure the right executives are there, make sure the right team's there for Russell Martin. Give him time, allow him to build, get the right players in. Stage one complete. January, go again. Maybe be in a position in January to add a 2 million or a 4 million player if he's going to make the difference. Not getting to January, Chris, and not being able to afford Lawrence Shanklin 2 Januaries ago, which might have made the difference. Do you get what I mean? Be in the position where we can plan, add, and take it on a wee bit more. That's the kind of progress I'm looking for from Rangers on and off the pitch. And I'm sorry that was so long-winded. I tried to get there.
Like, just to almost to sum up that point, I'll use one of the words that Andrew Cavenagh used the other day there when he mentioned that him and Paraag will be the catalyst. They feel that Rangers need a catalyst, and they are that. No, they are that catalyst. They are that driving force. And like you, actually, as you were speaking there, it made me think back to our New Year show when we both said we just want Rangers to act like a normal big football club once again. And I think they've now got a board and they've got a team there that is going to do that. Does that mean they will definitely win the title next season? Of course it doesn't. Does that mean they'll definitely go on an extended European run? Of course it doesn't. But I think they've got people who will make right decisions more often than not. And if you do that in the long run, eventually you're not going to find yourself, as you say, in this constant state of rip it up, start again. Every summer we're talking about rebuild and regroup and all the rest of it. Rangers have to start building properly, and this feels like the summer when that will happen. On that cheery note, for us to end on a rare cheery note, we will, as always, I have to thank you for your support here on the Talking Point, for your support across the YouTube channel, and of course your support across the Rangers Review website, where we would bring you the best Rangers journalism for the best insight, analysis, transfer rumours, transfer confirmations, and all the latest opinion from myself, Josh, and Stevie. Of course, subscribe to the website. I believe our £1 for 6-month deal is still ongoing. That's the best deal that anyone involved with Rangers will do this summer. I don't care how much Hamza Eagleman is sold for. So on that note, Stevie, thanks for your time as always.
No, thank you. Pleasure to be here and have a kind of positive discussion about things that might happen. And I would hope next time we're back, my tip of 5 players coming in before the Panathinaikos game is well underway. 1 out of 5 is a bit slow for my liking, Chris. But hopefully by the time we're back in a couple of weeks previewing that one, we're more excited about what's in the door. So thanks everybody for their time. Thoroughly enjoyed it, mate. Thank you.
If the Rangers board are watching, and we know they do, there is your challenge for ahead of the next Talking Point. On that note, thank you very much.